Okay, today we're going to dive into one of the most famous and, frankly, one of the most misunderstood warnings Jesus ever gave. It's a verse that so many of us know and love, but we've completely lost its original lethal seriousness.
You've heard this one, right? Of course you have. We pull it out for baby dedications, we slap it on greeting cards. It feels so poetic and gentle, comforting. We've kind of turned this razor-sharp warning into a soft, fuzzy suggestion. But what if I told you that our cozy, gentle reading is completely 100% wrong? What if this verse wasn't meant to be comforting at all? The truth is, most of us, for a long time, have missed the entire point. I mean, just look at the contrast here. Our view of it is gentle and poetic, but the original moment, it was a sharp, lethal warning. This wasn't a comforting word, it was a direct rebuke to people who absolutely should have known better. And that right there is the crucial piece of the puzzle. Jesus wasn't speaking to a crowd of outsiders or his enemies. No, he was looking directly at Peter, James, and John, his inner circle. These are the guys who saw the miracles up close, the ones who walked with him every single day.
So, what were they doing in this big moment?
Well, they were acting like anything but saints. They were competing with each other, comparing resumes, getting offended, and literally arguing about which one of them was the greatest in the kingdom. That's the messy, human backdrop for his shocking statement.
So Jesus just stops everything. He calls a little kid over, puts him in the middle of this squabbling group of grown men, and drops this absolute bombshell. Unless you change, you will not enter the kingdom. Did you catch that? He doesn't say you won't get a front row seat. He says you won't get in at all.
Just let that sink in for a second. This was not a conversation about your status in heaven or what kind of rewards you're going to get. This was about the basic, fundamental requirement for entry. The apostles themselves, the future pillars of the church, were being warned that their attitude was a disqualifier for heaven itself. The stakes could not have been higher.
So what was the real issue here? Why did this petty argument among friends get met with such a severe, eternal warning? Well, Jesus was confronting something way more dangerous than just a simple disagreement.
He was going after what the Bible calls leaven. Now, leaven is this powerful metaphor. It's like a tiny pinch of yeast that you put in a huge batch of dough. And once it's in there, it doesn't stay small. It quietly, invisibly works its way through everything until the entire batch is changed. Well, things like pride, offense, jealousy, that's spiritual leaven. And the process is always the same, isn't it? A small attitude of pride gets into the heart, but it never stays contained, does it? It multiplies, and before you know it, it has corrupted the entire environment, whether that's a friendship, a family, or a whole church. And this is the core insight, the reason for the warning. Jesus understood that heaven is, by definition, a pure environment. If he allowed attitudes like pride, jealousy, and who's the greatest to walk through the gates, then heaven wouldn't stay heaven for long. It would eventually become just another version of earth. Now, if you think this sounds a bit extreme, let's look at the ultimate case study, Lucifer. His fall from heaven is the original story, the reason this standard has to be so absolute. Think about it. Lucifer wasn't cast out for some big, violent action. He was kicked out for a series of internal thoughts. It was a heart posture. I will be like the Most High. His entire rebellion started and was judged at the level of his internal attitude. Let's be super clear about this. He wasn't thrown out for murder. He wasn't even trying to stage a coup yet. He was removed for a thought, for a posture of pride that was growing in his heart. That is the mind-blowing standard of purity that heaven runs on. So here's the bottom line. Heaven's environment cannot survive thought-level rebellion. That's why Jesus looked his best friends in the eye and gave them such a terrifying warning. He knew that their jealousy and their pride, if they let it grow, was the exact same leaven that got Lucifer thrown out in the first place. So, when Jesus says, become like children, he's not telling these grown men to be childish, immature, naive, or ignorant. No, he's calling them to be childlike. And what does that mean? It means being humble enough to be corrected, trusting enough to just obey without arguing, and being quick to say, I'm sorry when you're wrong. This is what a heaven-ready posture actually looks like. It's a heart that's honest and humble. It's trusting. It repents fast. It doesn't try to negotiate with God's authority or find loopholes in his instructions. When it's corrected, the response isn't to build a legal case. It's simply to say, okay, you're right. But man,
This just confronts so much of our modern way of thinking, doesn't it? We've sort of been taught this really comfortable theology that says, hey, I'm saved by grace, so my ongoing attitudes, my cynicism, my secret pride, the grudges I hold, they don't really disqualify me.
Jesus' message was the total opposite. He looked at men who had healed the sick, cast out demons, men with the most impressive spiritual resumes you could imagine. And he told them, change your attitude or you will not get in. Your heart posture matters more than all your accomplishments. So this all brings us to a really personal moment of diagnosis. The question isn't just, am I saved? The question Jesus forces us to ask is this: would my current attitude survive in heaven? Would my cynicism, my need to be right, my quiet pride, would it contaminate that pure environment? Let me put it another way. This is the real gut check question. If heaven's purity depended entirely on your internal posture, exactly as it is right now, would it still be heaven tomorrow? Or would your leaven start to spread? And it is so, so important that we see this the right way. This incredibly harsh warning, it wasn't cruel. It was actually one of the most merciful things Jesus ever did for his friends. He was warning them, correcting them, before it was too late to do anything about it. And that call is the exact same one for us today. It's a simple 3-step journey back, to turn away from the pride and the competing, to return to a place of humility and trust, and to become childlike again. Not childish, but clean. Because in the end, maybe the most profound truth of all is this: heaven isn't sustained just by God's infinite power. It's sustained by the willing, humble, and pure hearts of the people who live there. And developing that posture, well, that's the work we're all called to, starting right now.